Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, welcome to the business.
Thank you, Alicia. It's great to join you.
Why did you decide to put this list together?
On occasion, you'll find that some misguided public relations firms will think they can get away with just manufacturing verbiage and shoveling words out at a general media, creating a kaleidoscope of confusion. You can't figure out who's doing what. And the more controversial the issue is, the more they manufacture that smoke screen. So we like to get involved. The war broke out on the 24th of February. Some companies instantly pulled out, some very courageous ones. And then some others seemed to join on with very little actual skin in the game, very little activity. And we thought that we're all getting confused, that maybe somebody should take a look at the numbers, look at financial analyst reports, look at their public statements, looking at the company's legal financial disclosures, and see what they've really done. It has a catalytic effect. The courageous CEOs will walk out on a limb more because they're proud to be showcased. And the ones who want to be, but their boards of directors are holding them back, they want to benchmark and they want affirmation. This gives them affirmation you're not alone. And then those cowards are in the category of a list of shame. They want to move. So it has an accountability and salutary effect.
So public pressure works.
Public pressure has worked a lot. There's an interesting twist on this in that some of the early movers weren't just the surprisingly big oil companies and big technology companies of Dell and Apple and HP and IBM, Intel and AMD, but the professional service firms, as you know, those guys would usually rather shoot themselves than get involved in controversy. But there you have Bain and BCG, McKinsey, EY, and Deloitte and PwC, KPMG, and a number of law firms. Wow, why did they get involved? They don't have customers for that they have to worry about a giant backlash of the consumers, and they don't have investors because a lot of the companies that we outed 2 days ago, their stock plummeted 30%, way more than the market was down like 2%. Their stock was down 30%. Well, they don't have face these professional service firms have a different constituency. It's these Gen Z professionals that are more vocal and more willing and more mobile these days. And there was tremendous internal blowback and rebukes.
You're a leadership expert. Were there any companies that particularly impressed you or did the opposite?
The cosmetics firms, as Estee Lauder and Coty and Richemont, and a lot of the fashion businesses were surprisingly PVH were surprisingly cowardly, coming up with all kinds of crazy excuses on why they needed to be there as some vital, human rights protections that they needed. It was crazy. There's no humane reason why those luxury goods companies needed to be there. Usually those luxury goods are on the frontier of activity on social change. But in this case, they're so afraid that the general buying public is going to be poisoned by Putin's propaganda, a nice alliteration there, that they wouldn't really be able to restore that trust in the public. So that I think I was really shocked and disappointed. The consumer brands were still kicking and screaming, moved over, with the exception of Nike and Adidas and H&M.
Is it harder for consumer goods companies to pick up and leave because of the physical presence versus corporate services firms, perhaps, who may be able to shift digitally?
No, I don't think so at all. Is that you've got tens of thousands of employees at those professional service firms, and the technology firms of IBM and others have plenty of equipment there. Intel and AMD, there's plenty of equipment, but you also have other forms of heavy industry that's there, from Rockwell Automation. It's all equipment and a lot of plant equipment, and the oil and gas companies of BP and Shell and Exxon. That's massive equipment.
What happens if a foreign company stays in Russia in this environment?
Then they become a shameful operation that a company, a big retailer, global retailer, Japanese-based company called Uniqlo, they're proudly and defiantly staying there. Well, shame on them. They'll see a flight of top employees. They're certainly going to see customers will be a pretty significant backlash against them. Nobody's going to want to hang out with them. Any executives, it's going to be a stain on their career, on their resume, and they are basically partners in butchery by helping to support Putin. The idea of these sanctions is to take what you can do to couple the government imposed legal sanctions, economic sanctions, with these voluntary. These corporations doing this purely voluntary, and no government's even asked them to do it, let alone they're required to do it. And there's no trade associations or anything. It's all individual voluntary initiative, which is quite impressive. And those companies look bold and courageous for doing so, and responsible and ethical. The companies that don't have quite a stain on themselves, and they don't enhance their brand in any way.
Uniglow says clothes are a basic necessity. That's why they're staying. Is that a fair argument?
That's the most stupid, not your argument, but their argument. It's completely stupid. You don't need those $5 throwaway clothes. That's not exactly quality clothing, and it's uh, just fad driven fashion. But there's no necessity there. People have fabric, and you can wear last year's fabric. These are hardly necessities. But even if it was, bandages, medicines, and other necessities of life, that too should be shut down. The whole goal of this is anything which truly is a necessity, that should be shut down. The idea is to freeze society. We're not trying to create soft landings. We're trying to come up with something that's humanitarian by preventing them by being killed by bullets and bombs. So we're one step away from that. So that's why we want to freeze civil society, get all those people out on the streets mad at their government. I'm not trying to make them complacent and comfortable.
You've written about the corporate backlash in South Africa in 1986. Can you talk us through some of the parallels between then and what's happening now in Russia?
It's very effective. It was in the pre-social media age. So the pace of business life is scaled back a little bit. So things that would happen in the course of hours happen in the course of days, and things that happen in the course of days back then would happen in the course of minutes today. You had Prime Minister, a ruthless one, both taken down, and a great one, de Klerk, came in and immediately began negotiations on Robben's Island with Mandela, and liberating Nelson Mandela, the great African National Congress leader who'd done nothing wrong but spent 27 years in prison, and then immediately began the dissolution of apartheid. This happened because you had 200 companies led by General Motors and IBM and others who very courageously pulled out of South Africa in conjunction with sanctions that Ronald Reagan actually vetoed, said, oh, this will be bad for Black Africans because it will hurt them in their economic. Well, who's he to speak for Black South Africans? And in fact, they wanted these sanctions. And I talked with Bishop Tutu, who is a great a human rights leader in the era of apartheid, and he said that the business community's support, in conjunction with the sanctions, was critical in freezing civil society. That's what happened then. That's what could happen now.
Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.